Located in East Central Africa, Uganda is a developing country that has one of the youngest and most rapidly growing populations in the world, where the total fertility rate is among the world's highest at 5.8 children per woman. With a low HDA of 0.493, Uganda has a need for improvement and reformation in all aspects. The legacy of British colonization has created a government of division and corruption. Political instability has made it difficult for further development in areas such as education, health, economy, and civil rights. Our mission is to create lasting solutions through peace, justice, and strong institutions in order to alleviate poverty and promote positive reformations within the society of Uganda. Our vision is to create a system that supports educational growth, improvement of healthcare, and a righteous government which will provide a stable environment for not only its citizens but for future generations. Education is an essential factor for the growth and development of Uganda. It builds the foundation for individuals to grow mentally, broaden our perspectives, and fundamentally change our lives. However, only 78.4% of the entire population is literate, whereas the average age of schooling is 5.7 years. Our objective is to increase the availability of educational institutions, incorporate sex education, improve literacy rates, and provide equitable access to quality and affordable education to all Ugandans. In order to improve education across Uganda, we want to empower women and challenge cultural norms within society, as well as creating public schools for children and the prospect of educating them and expanding their opportunities in the future. Educational infrastructure should be able to provide a proper learning environment and materials for all students, whether it includes smaller classroom sizes, qualified teachers, textbooks, and so forth. We also plan to implement sex education within schools and the awareness of contraceptives and consent, as education and health go hand in hand.
By creating more schools and educating Ugandans on the importance of education, overpopulation in some areas that now have schools may create a problem. Having more people enrolled in schools could as well overwhelm the teachers. To mitigate the risk, we will educate and train more teachers so that we have more classrooms and a smaller student-teacher ratio. We will also strive to build several schools in many areas so that overcrowding and the teacher-student ratio would not be a problem. Resistance from people who oppose equal education rights for females could also pose as a risk to educating Ugandans. The overall literacy rate for all people, the school attendance rate for both boys and girls, and increasing technical jobs and skills are just some of the things we plan to improve for Uganda.
Uganda has a range of devastating health issues, including access to health services, infant mortality, and a very high risk of infectious diseases. The lack of contraceptive prevalence and women's rights has led the country to have the 7th highest world rate of adults living with HIV/AIDS at 6.5%. The rapid growth in population is increasing problems such as overcrowded health centers, and many of the active health centers across the country are inaccessible to the majority of people due to the absence of roads. Healthcare in Uganda is poorly funded, and government corruption takes an effect on how much money is actually being allocated for health care centers.
Our objective is to develop sustainable solutions that will increase the number of skilled healthcare professionals by establishing and supporting training programs. Programs that offer training on safe maternal care and births will be especially crucial to our mission. We will also be working towards improving the accessibility of health centers by funding infrastructure programs that build more health centers in rural areas and roads that will allow for transportation to clinics. To improve the affordability of healthcare, we plan to open free health clinics in low-income areas. Finally, to combat the HIV and AIDS epidemic in Uganda, our foundation will be supporting education programs, offering free contraceptives, and advocating for the expansion of women's rights. Challenges that may mitigate the significance of our impact include corruption, economic and political instability, and limits to women's rights. We will be carefully vetting all funded programs and monitoring financials to prevent corruption from minimizing our impact. We will also be working to ensure that our programs have the flexibility to adapt to changing economic and political environments, so that we can ensure healthcare coverage will not be negatively impacted. Indicators that will reflect the outcomes of our impact include a decrease in infant mortality, maternal deaths, prevalence of HIV and AIDS, and
Since attaining of independence from England, Uganda has struggled to find political stability because of extreme fragmentation within the country. Things are not much better now as the nation is plagued with huge problems within its government and police. Although initially a good leader, Yoweri Museveni has worsened the corruption in Uganda serving as president from 1986 with a total of 31 years. After running against his doctor in the 2016 election, Museveni won again. However, it was soon discovered that the election had been rigged as the opposition candidate was thrown in jail just 3 days before voting took place. Government repression is a huge problem, including the lack of protections for oppressed groups like LGBT citizens and women. There is currently no constitutional protection for the LGBT community, and homosexuality is punishable by death.
Do you personally dislike homosexuals?
Of course, they are disgusting. What sort of people are they?
Police brutality is a major issue as well, and many Ugandans fear for their lives because of this. The police have been known to kill citizens unjustly, but they are never held responsible because no investigations take place. We would like to bring Uganda's ranking in the Corruption Perceptions Index into the top 100. It currently stands 151st out of 176 nations. We feel the best way to mitigate this problem is through education, raising awareness, and advocacy. We plan to educate the population in Uganda on civil rights and push for attention to Uganda's current issues in the United States. Despite the major differences in policies, the United States remains the largest donor to Uganda. We will advocate to elected officials among the United States government and administration with the intention that future funding is conditional and tied directly for positive changes in civil liberties.
We may disagree about gay marriage, but surely we can agree that it is unconscionable to target gays and lesbians for who they are, whether it's here in the United States or more extremely in odious laws that are being proposed most recently in Uganda.
However, it must be considered that there may be backlash from the Ugandan government. Despite reduced funding or threats to reduce funding, Museveni could choose to ignore the United States' efforts to make a positive impact on civil liberties, given his opposing beliefs on discrimination and civil rights.
Reformation in Uganda through education, health, and government will allow Uganda to develop exponentially as a country. By distributing the funds equally to these three categories, we can turn these ideas into reality and help Uganda become prosperous and enhance the lives of all Ugandans and as well as future generations.